Hello, my name is Allison Carmen, and welcome to my podcast, 10 Minutes to Less Suffering. And the name of today's podcast is Now is Not a Time for Despair. And I'm sure, like many people around the world that listen to my podcast, my mind has been filled with the Russian invasion on Ukraine. And then I remembered what I always say about despair. Despair is another addiction to certainty. Despair is when we believe that based on today, the future is bleak. Based on today, things can never get better. Based on what we are seeing before our eyes, we're all doomed. And despair is really a very easy thing to feel when you're afraid, when you're worried, when you're scared, because it doesn't take much. It just allows our fear to take over. Hope, on the other hand, resilience, faith, that's a whole different game. That's when you could look at today, no matter what it looks like, no matter how bad things are, no matter how uncertain things are, no matter how scared you are. You look towards the future and you realize that you don't know. And because you don't know, things can get better. And because you don't know, things can improve. Because you don't know, in a circumstance like today, the Ukrainians can fight for their freedom and win. Or there can be peace. Or something else that we can't imagine can happen that could help the Ukrainian people. And when we fall into despair, we stop trying. And then the negativity takes over, and then we're not adding, we're not helping, we're just surrendering to a situation that might be unfair, unjust, and not how we want the world to be. So then you might ask me, well, if it's out of my control, what's the point? What's the point of how I think? What's the point of what I do? And my response is, everything matters. Even when we believe things are out of our control, everything matters. Because you don't know which act, you don't know which thought, you don't know which part of your day, part of your life will add to the things that are important to you, will add to the well-being of the world, will add to the well-being of the people that you love, or might add to your goals or your desires or your dreams. We truly never know what makes a difference. But the beauty of life is there's always the potential that every action that we do all day long will. It reminded me of this idea of the butterfly effect, so I started to look more into it. And although in pop culture, in movies, they talk about how a butterfly could move its wings and can cause a tornado someplace around the world. And although that theory is not quite as straightforward as everyone makes it, a better definition is the butterfly effect describes a phenomenon in chaos theory where a minor change in circumstances can cause a large change in outcome. And that's why it's so important to not fall into despair, to not fall into this thought process that I can't see a way out, therefore it doesn't matter, and then we stop trying. Again, despair is our need to know. It's like preparing yourself for the worst because you can't handle the unknown. And we have to remember that uncertainty is always with us. We all know it, but we try to avoid it. But when we just accept it, we accept the unknown. It stops scaring us, and we realize the unknown has possibilities that we love. The unknown has miracles. The unknown has peace. The unknown is filled with the potential that we dream of. But we need to engage, and we need to embrace, and we need to never give up hope. And I know I talk about maybe all the time, but when I touch despair, when I fall towards it, when I get overwhelmed with things I can't control, like the pandemic or the war, it makes you feel like you can't make a difference. You can't change a thing. It reminds me sometimes when I pull all the plugs out at night, or I always make sure to shut my lights, and then I go to Times Square and the lights are on 24 hours a day. And it kind of makes you feel like, what's the point? What does it matter what I do? And then I go back to the fact, well, that's my intention. My intention is to save energy. And what if 1 million people were doing it? And what if I take action beyond that? Or if I want more peace in the world? If I'm sitting around and I'm not treating the people I work with well or my children well, then I'm not promoting that. But if I promote peace, will it help the Ukrainian people? I will never know, but I know that I'm adding to peace. I'm depositing peace into the world. And then if enough people deposit the idea of peace, the action of peace, the thought of peace, maybe there is a butterfly effect. Or maybe we create pockets of peace that last for generations. We could never know. But at least we're in the game. Until my last breath, I would rather be in the game of hope and trying and helping and depositing good things into the world than sitting in despair, sitting in that state of lack and sadness and darkness that the world could never change. And am I using my maybe statements? Of course I am. For those of you who have never listened to my podcast before, maybe is the hope within the unknown. We have a tendency always to look at the maybe not. We see something we don't like and we can't imagine it getting better, and then we drop out, we stop trying, or we live with terrible stress and worry. And we forget the other side of maybe, the hope within the unknown. And you could take your biggest fears and question them, because our fears are not absolutely true. They're a projection of today into the future. And what the maybe statements do for me and for many people around the world is it helps remind us that nothing is absolute, nothing is for sure, which means despair has no place in our lives, but hope does. In the last few days, my maybe statements have really been centered more about challenging my negativity. If I start to worry about the Ukrainian people and their safety and their well-being, or democracy around the world, I say, well, maybe things will change, and maybe these thoughts are not true, and maybe I can do something today for myself or the people I work with or the people I know, or maybe I could pray more or donate more. Maybe I can do something to add to the peaceful world that I want to see. So I'm just using maybe to dilute my negative thoughts and using maybe to open myself up to things that I can do. And I know everyone around the world has different challenges, different uncertainties, different things that keep you up at night. But if we're not careful, despair creeps in and it steals our hope and it steals our potential and it steals our dreams and it steals peace. Peace for ourselves, peace for our neighbors, and peace for the world. And if you just remember that despair is just a form of certainty, it's a projection that's not real, you could open up to hope. And hope is the beginning of everything. I always say it, hope is the beginning of every business, every marriage, every relationship. Everything you do starts with a hope. And if we're not careful, despair will steal that. And just remember that uncertainty is your best friend, because the unknown brings new solutions. The unknown brings miracles. The unknown can bring peace. Do we need to act for those things? Of course. But we don't want to lose our way and lose our potential to act and live with such deep stress and worry that it clutters our mind and it closes our heart. May all of us around the world stay hopeful. May all of us around the world be able to keep our families and our loved ones safe. May all of us around the world experience the ease of peace. May all of us around the world not give in to despair. May all of us around the world believe in the potential of humanity, the potential of uncertainty, potential that exists within us all. And if we all stay hopeful and we act on those hopes and we continue to be kind and compassionate to one another, maybe, just maybe, we could live in a world with love, equality, and peace for all. Thank you for listening to this podcast today. If you'd like to get in touch with me, you could email me at allison@allisoncarmen.com. If you'd like to buy my book, The Gift of Maybe, or A Year Without Men, they're available at all major bookstores and online retailers. And if you like this podcast, you can subscribe and leave a comment.